Our guest presenter today is Gina Carlon-Tozer from Vida Solutions, and the topic is Building Resilient People, 4 Secrets to a Successful Stress Management Program. Gina is the Director of Learning and Development for Vida Solutions and has over 20 years experience in the industry. And without further ado, I'd like to hand over to Gina.
Thanks so much, Sue, and thanks everyone for joining us today. I've been in this field for about 20 years in the field of adult learning and culture change. And really the last 5 years I've been primarily focused on the field of resilience and stress management. And the result of that has been we've joined up in a partnership with Onsite Health Solutions, and we've brought to the market a new program which is called Thrive and Sustain, which is a resilience or a stress management program. In developing that, we've learnt a lot. So today's really going to be about sharing with you some of the main secrets that will help you in your own organisations deliver a really high impact stress management program. Today we're going to be looking at the 4 key secrets, and we're really going to be focusing in quite a bit of detail on all 4. So let's firstly start by talking a bit about stress, especially stress as we're seeing it in Australia right now. So what we're finding with our clients almost universally across the country is that this is a time when employees are placed under more demands than at any other time we've seen in the past. And people are really struggling with the increase in demands. I'm imagining even some of you sitting here today are feeling probably a high level of stress, and you may sometimes feel that you're not even able to meet the demands that are coming at you day by day, sometimes hour by hour. Let's start by having a quick poll to get a sense of the stress levels currently in your organisation. So as you can see there, we've got, you're really seeing the largest percentage of it at a moderate level with a sprinkling at the other ends. This is what's been very interesting in Australia lately. There's been a lot of research into the levels of stress in organisations. In fact, Medibank Private did a really groundbreaking study in about 2008, and they found that a small percentage of the workforce manage stress well, but the majority of the Australian workforce is currently not trained to effectively manage stress. Now this costs the Australian economy around $14.81 billion per year, the research found. Now that's pretty staggering figures. In fact, it's around 3.2 days per worker per year, or around, in a simple way of looking at it, is around $800 per worker per annum. So what we know when we're looking at statistics and figures like this is that there's a whole lot that needs to be done to improve how stress is being managed in organisations and how effectively stress management programs are taking place. So in order to do that, we've looked a little bit at the why stress management is so important. So now let's spend the rest of our time focusing on the how. Let's look at how you can maximise workforce engagement in your stress management programs. Now, the main thing you need to remember whenever you're undertaking any kind of culture change or behaviour change program is that behaviour change is a process. It's not a singular event. So what do we mean by that? Well, you've got to understand a couple of key things. You've got to recognise the stages that people must go through in order to adapt a new behaviour. And probably even more importantly, you've got to understand how they will feel as they're moving through those stages. So how can we do that? Well, in our Thrive and Sustain program, we use the trans-theoretical, or to put it simply, the TTM model of behaviour change. And what this model presumes is that an individual is going to go through 5 stages every time they incorporate a new behaviour change. They go through stage 1, which we call the pre-contemplation stage, and this is where they're not even intending to change. It hasn't even popped up as a possibility for them. They'll then move to the contemplation stage, which is where they're intending to begin change in the short term. They'll then move to the preparation, which is they're intending to begin immediately. They'll then move through to action, which is they've been practicing the behaviour for less than 6 months. And then finally they move to maintenance. So this is when they've been practicing the behaviour for more than 6 months. Now the model is very clear that if individuals don't go through each of the stages, the behaviour change won't be lasting. So a successful stress management program really must help participants undertake supported progress through all the stages of change. And only by doing this will it lead to long-term adoption of stress management strategies and techniques and skills. About change is that it doesn't work based on fear. You're never ever going to get your people to change if you're trying to motivate them with fear, particularly in the area of stress management. Some really good research came out of the Economic and Social Research Council in 2006. That's a British research group. And they released findings on 129 different studies of behaviour change strategies. And the survey confirmed that the least effective strategies were those that aroused fear or regret, particularly in an area like stress management. So how do you get people to change? Well, firstly, you need to understand what people go through whenever they're trying out something new or trying to learn a new behaviour. When you're asking people to practice and learn new stress management techniques, they often feel very uncomfortable, very much out of their comfort zone, and it can be emotionally quite challenging for people. So let's have a look at this as it relates to our model. Firstly, learning new habits is often hard and it often makes people feel very uncomfortable. But we really need to explore that as it relates to the stages of change. So let's go back to our model, the TTM, and have a think of the first stage of behaviour change. Now this is a very challenging stage to move people through because at this stage of behaviour change, your people are not aware of the existence or the relevance of the new skill area or even their particular deficiency in the area concerned. They might even deny the usefulness of the new behaviour. And this is the stage of behaviour change where people they might be quite frightened, they may become quite hostile, depending on the new skills that you're introducing. So you'll see a lot of defensiveness and you might see people shut down or deny that their skill could even be quite any use to them in their own lives. In addition, a person must become conscious of their incompetence in this area before development or learning can begin. And that's why in a stress management program it's essential that you create a really safe environment for people to learn the new skills. It's really important to remember that when you first invite people in one of these programs, they may not feel ready to change or even be aware that change could be of any benefit to them. So it's a very delicate balance you're trying to achieve moving through this first stage. You want them to feel motivated to change, so you need to get them to recognise that there is some benefit to them, and you also have to enable them to be aware that they have the opportunity to grow or learn, so become a little bit aware of some incompetence in this area. In addition, this stage of development is pretty challenging because research into adult learning tells us that adults learn best through active participation. So that means learning by doing or making mistakes, trying things out. But this makes people feel very vulnerable and way out of their comfort zone. So to maximise engagement in any program, people must be able to see the benefit of adopting the new behaviour, and they also need to recognise the only way to learn is by stepping out of their comfort zone. So going back to the model, TTM, we're to look at the next stage of behaviour change, which is contemplation. As we discussed, in order for people to move forward, they need to move outside their comfort zone and they need to recognise that moving forward will be a benefit to them. Also, as we second stage, which is the contemplation stage, they become aware of the existence and the relevance of the new behaviour and, more importantly, of their deficiency in the area. Ideally, you get them to become aware by getting them to practice out the new skill. They start to realise that by improving in this area and improving their ability in this area, it's actually going to be of some benefit to them in their life. And finally, ideally, they make a commitment. This is the key. If you're able to get them to make a commitment to learn and practice the new behaviour, then and only then can you move on to the next stages. So this is why this stage is probably the key stage. You need to obtain buy-in and this is critical for maximising engagement in any program. And in order to do this, you must make the skill acquisition highly desirable, and you've got to present a really compelling argument. In behaviour change theory, we call this is about decisional balance. So you need to get them to make the decision and to recognise that the skill will be of benefit to them. So in our Thrive and Sustain program, we do this by putting it in pretty simple language. We talk about this concept of mind fitness. So, it's pretty safe, and we present a pretty compelling argument to move people through this stage of behaviour change. We've really got to set a compelling argument for mind fitness. Just as a fit body is the best preparation for operating effectively in life, and it has endurance and strength and flexibility, a fit mind has mental agility, attention, emotional intelligence, and situational awareness. So once we get through those two stages, we then move on to the preparation and action stage of behaviour change. And most of this is also covered in our half-day program. So this is when we start introducing the participants to a number of skills and techniques for stress management. And in our own program, it's a mindfulness-based stress reduction program. So I'm not going to have the time today to talk through in detail, what exactly is covered in the program. But of course, after the webinar, really happy to speak to Anne about, what's covered in a mindfulness-based program. But whatever approach you choose, this is the stage where we start getting people prepared and they start getting them to practice. So the key to moving through preparation and action stages is really practice, practice, practice. You practice the new skill so much that you develop it to the point of unconscious competence, or conscious competence firstly. So let this typify by when a person can perform the new behaviour reliably well, when they concentrate on it. They can perform the new behaviour without assistance, for the most part. However, they cannot perform the new behaviour unless thinking about it, as it's not yet second nature to them. It doesn't just come automatically. They're able to demonstrate the new behaviour, but it's unlikely that they'd be able to really teach someone else how to do it very well. And they should ideally continue to practice the new behaviour and to really commit to becoming unconsciously competent at the skill. So the key here is about getting them to commit to ongoing practice, because without practice, the skill will never be acquired. They'll just step back, they'll go back into their old habit zone, and it won't be something that they can consciously or unconsciously call upon. So now we've got our next key point, which is how to measure and evaluate success. So this is, as I said when I was answering Scott's question, you need to have really accurate data to give your organisation a clear snapshot of the stress levels in your organisation. Now, ideally, you're going to get the data pre-program, between program, or while you're running out the program, and also post-program. So a good report will enable you to do that. And then you're able to assess the impact or the effectiveness of the services or the products that organisations decided to use. The key question is, has it helped you achieve your objectives? So in order to be able to do that, and this is, I say this every time you're rolling out a program, data is essential. There's no way you're going to be able to evaluate how effective something is without being able to measure what your starting point was, what your midpoint was, and what your end point was. And ideally, you know, go back for over the years and continually reassessing how it's going. So it's management fun. So when I talk to people about how you make stress management fun, they're often like, well, that seems to be an impossible task. The way we engage learners is through experiential learning. So it's about the difference between watching a game and playing a game. You need them to have so much fun that they forget that they're learning, and so that they're physically, mentally and emotionally really involved in the process and able to apply their goals. So we do this in a number of different ways in our stress program. One thing that people wouldn't normally associate with a program like this is we get people to juggle. That's a really fun and safe and really active way to get people to start to explore self-talk. You know, self-talk can often be quite a dry category, so we really make it an interactive and fun way to explore that. We also use a whole lot of different multimedia, so for humour, to really maximise engagement and to demonstrate key points. And we also have to be aware of the range of ages in the room. So some of our audience will be technological immigrants, much like myself, and some will be natives. So they would have been born and have a high level of comfort with the technology. So when you're rolling out a program, you have to take all these things into consideration. One of the other techniques we use is we show a lot of animation clips. And probably my favourites, we use a lot of Mr. Men and Little Miss clips. So we often find that's a really safe way to demonstrate emotional reactions that are working for you and emotional responses that are not working for you. For example, Mr. Worry is a great one to show ruminative thinking. So there's just a couple of ideas. And that's, I suppose, one of the key things to remember when you're doing a program like this. You need to have a team who's extremely experienced in working with your adult learners, because it's, as I said, a challenging group and becoming more so as we're moving on. Now we're quickly going to move on to the last point. It's about how to avoid the biggest mistakes. And I suppose I've already briefly touched on it, but let's really drill into it. The biggest mistake that people do on a program like this is that they don't attend to the maintenance stage of behaviour change. So they might go through the first 4 stages, you know, to whatever degree of success, but then they leave it. So they might do a half-day training event or a 1-day, and then that's the end of the training process. So the problem with this is that organisations don't support participants in this crucial maintenance stage. And one thing we do know is that a standalone training event will never be enough. It will never actually embed the new behaviours and maximise learning. This is the crucial phase. This is when the real skill acquisition takes place, in that crucial 6 to 12 month period. Otherwise, you're basically throwing away all your money and all your effort. You really need to use a range of blended, which is your face-to-face and electronic components, to deliver the maintenance phase. In the sustain part of our program, we look at using an online e-coaching tool. Probably one of the key things we do, and the differentiators, is we train up sustain champions. So 10% of the people that come on a program like this get trained up as champions, and then they roll out a series of 6 10-minute toolboxes over the next 6-month period. We also use a lot of support paraphernalia. This is something we learned in our behaviour-based safety work, but you really want to keep the new behaviour top of mind. So we use posters and desk stands to keep the new behaviours top of mind. We also utilise peer coaching, which is something you guys could all do in your own organisations. And we use a number of support podcasts. So that's a way to, you know, cover off the maintenance stage in a way that's really both time and cost effective. So when you get to the maintenance stage, this is really when you start to see that the behaviour, what you're aiming for, is that the behaviour has entered the unconscious part of the brain. So it's become like second nature. And it can be performed while you do something else. So, some people might be able to read a book while knit or have a conversation while watch TV. But really, yeah, you're able to do a number of different tasks at the same time. And the person might be able to teach the skill to others. Although one thing that's interesting here, after a period of time, once a skill becomes unconscious, someone may actually lose their ability to teach the new skill because it's really coming from a place that's largely instinctual. So, that's why you need to do top-up training. And some people liken this to being sent on an advanced driving course where, you're really just topping up your skills and ensuring that you're continually moving out of your comfort zone to learning new ways of doing things. I want to make sure that people get back to their work on as we discussed. So I'm going to throw to you now for closing, and thank you so much everyone for being here today. I really look forward to the opportunity to work with some of you on your own stress programs, and I wish all of you the very best of luck. I'm sure that you'll have some really great outcomes. So thanks so much for joining me here today. Back to you, Sue.
Gina, that was fantastic. Thank you for presenting with us today.